We've arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The target, a primitive little world they call Earth. Their communications are a chaotic mess of nonsense. Their spaceships are basically just chemical rockets, crude, inefficient things they can barely get out of their own atmosphere. They actually think they're the only intelligent life in their own system, which is a cute, arrogant idea for a species that's still killing each other over patches of dirt and burning fossils for energy. We sent our greatest fleet, 847 warships, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, to give them the honor of becoming our subjects. For 3,000 years, our glorious armada has enforced the Emperor's will, conquering over 300 worlds and crushing anyone who dared to resist. Our shields have never been broken. Our weapons can turn mountains into clouds of dust. They will see our might, and they will know what true despair feels like. We called it our glorious armada. It was supposed to be an execution. We just never imagined it'd be our own. But on Earth, there was no panic, no war rooms filled with generals shouting into phones. Instead, deep beneath the planet's crust, in bunkers built over generations, there was only a deep, patient calm. Here, men and women sat at glowing blue terminals, watching the approaching fleet not with fear, but with the quiet focus of a student about to ace a final exam. On their screens, the 847 warships weren't a terrifying armada. They were just a math problem, a set of mass and trajectory calculations they had spent their entire lives preparing to solve. Aboard the hidden defense platform Aegis, Captain David Mitchell briefed his pilots. His calm was more reassuring than any patriotic speech could ever be. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Telemetry confirms they're sticking to the Imperial playbook. Heavy ships in the middle, lighter ones on the screen. They think their shields are unbreakable. They think we're going to meet them head-on with lasers and bullets. We're not." He pointed to a 3D map of the solar system, where the Zephyrian fleet glowed like an angry red hornet's nest. Phase 1 is all about gravity. We let them get comfortable at the Lagrange point. Let them bunch up their formation, nice and tight. We need them arrogant. We need them to walk right into it. "Lieutenant Bennett," he said, nodding to a young woman at the front. "You and Fury Squadron, you're up for Phase 2. Forget dogfighting. Your job is to use the chaos we create. They'll be fighting us. You'll be fighting the battlefield itself." There was no cheering, just quiet nods of confirmation. These weren't soldiers preparing for a desperate last stand. They were professionals clocking in for a shift. For 70 years, ever since a first disastrous encounter with a lone alien scout taught them a brutal lesson, humanity had been preparing, hiding, building, waiting for this exact moment. The Zephyrian Empire called it an invasion. Humanity's defense grid just called it graduation day. Admiral Vexar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Will of Zarth, feeling, well, mostly bored. As a little show of force, he ordered a forward cruiser to fire a single lance at the barren moon orbiting the planet. The energy beam, powerful enough to crack a continent, silently vaporized the rock. A statement, a declaration of godhood. Surely the primitives would see this and surrender. Earth's response was silence. Minutes ticked by. Vexar's perfect. Confidence was pricked with annoyance. Didn't they understand? "Advance the fleet," Vexar commanded. "Full battle formation. Teach them some respect." And then it happened. Not a weapon firing, not a missile launch. It started as a flicker in space, a distortion, like the stars themselves had warped for a second. On the bridge, a technician shouted, "Admiral, the dreadnought's unbreakable and conqueror. They're off course." Vexar stared at the main viewer. The two largest ships in his fleet, each over 10 kilometers long, were pulling towards each other. Their engines flared, fighting to correct, but it was useless. They were caught in something no engine could overcome. "What is happening?" Vexar roared. "Report!" "I don't know, Admiral. It's like space itself is pulling them together." The two colossal dreadnoughts collided. Shields, designed to stop energy blasts, were useless against the irresistible pull. of twisted physics. There was no grand explosion at first, just a horrific, silent crumpling of hyperdense metal. Hulls were twisted into unrecognizable knots of matter. Then their power cores went critical, and the two most powerful ships in the Zepyrian fleet vanished in a silent, blooming star. One shot, and two of his best ships were gone. A single shot that had no projectile, no beam, and no travel time. It just was. Before the shock could even register, Phase 2 began. From hidden bases on the moon and disguised orbital platforms, Fury-class interceptors launched. They weren't really ships. They were tungsten rods strapped to relativistic engines, hitting a fraction of light speed in seconds. They didn't need warheads. They were the warheads. They tore through the Zepyrian fleet, coring battle cruisers from bow to stern and leaving perfectly clean holes as the ships explosively decompressed. Then came the fighters. Lieutenant Bennett's squadron dove into the chaos. But they didn't fight. They danced. They used the gravitational distortions the main weapons had created, slingshotting around invisible gravity currents to perform impossible maneuvers. They'd appear inside an enemy's shield bubble, unload plasma torpedoes into a vulnerable engine, and then vanish. From Earth, thousands of missiles launched, arcing high and low in a brilliant, deadly swarm. They weren't aimed at the front of the warships, but at the tops, bottoms, and rears, overwhelming point defense systems that were only watching for a frontal assault. On the bridge of the Will of Zarth, Admiral Vexar watched in pure horror. His fleet, the greatest in the galaxy, wasn't being fought. It was being dismantled, systematically, professionally, without passion. It was a slaughter. It was target practice. The lone Zepyrian scout ship, the Vigil, jumped to hyperspace, its hull scorched and its sensors screaming. On the bridge, the comms officer just stared, replaying the fleet's final moments. Admiral Vexar's last transmission wasn't a roar of defiance, but a choked whisper. His flagship, crippled and alone, was surrounded by the wreckage of his armada. Then a message appeared on his screen. No face, no demand for surrender. Just simple white text in perfect Zepyrian script. You should not have come. Then the distortions returned, centered on Vexar's ship. It wasn't crushed this time. It was unmade. The fundamental forces holding its atoms together were gently turned off. The flagship dissolved into a shimmering cloud of particles that scattered into the solar wind. Aboard the Vigil, the lone survivor tried to compose a report to the Empire, his hands shaking. They are not primitive, the report began. It's a lie, a multi-generational deception. Their world is not a prize. It's a fortress. They don't fight with energy or kinetics. They wield gravity like a weapon. They treat the laws of physics like a toy. We detected no fleet before our arrival. Their defenses are buried in their planet, perfectly hidden. We thought they were a young race just reaching for the stars. We were catastrophically wrong. This isn't the technology of a species reaching for the stars. It's the technology of a species that has survived something far worse than us. A species that learned a long time ago that the only true security is the ability to deliver absolute, terrifying annihilation. The Zepyrian glorious armada is gone. All 847 ships. All hands. There's nothing left but debris. Do not send another fleet. Do not answer their signals. Erase this system from the star charts. The human race is not to be conquered. They are to be feared. Deep in a quiet control room. On Earth, a final log entry was made. The synthesized voice was cold and flat. Zepyrian fleet neutralized. Threat eliminated. Debris analysis confirms 847 wrecks. A new ring of refined metals has formed in a stable solar orbit. We sent no warnings before they arrived. The wreckage will serve as our warning to any who follow. There was a pause. A silence that stretched across the solar system. Then, a new directive was entered into the global defense grid. A simple standing order. The galaxy has a new rule. Do not knock on Earth's door. We will answer. If you enjoyed that story, Do us a favor and hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next.